welcome to a bit of an impromptu Transport Evolved live stream. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. I am for the host, primary host and owner of Transport Evolved, the website, the YouTube channel, and along with a team of amazing people, we create content about the world of cleaner, greener, safer, and smarter vehicles. Hello, everybody watching. I assume that some of you watching right now are people who are not here because they are here because they don't want to be watching the sports ball and the superb owl, which is taking place in about half an hour. My wife is from the state of Missouri, unfortunately for her. And actually, that's a mean thing. She's from the state of Missouri. And so I think she does want to watch because there is a Missouri team playing. If you are watching from outside the US, there is Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. It's essentially a city split down the middle by a state line. So Kansas City, Missouri is playing in the Super Bowl, or the superb owl. But anyway, I am here doing a live stream, and I feel like I need to talk to you all about some of the challenges that have been presenting themselves. Someone says that my my contrast is high on my camera. No, this is a webcam. This is an impromptu live stream. It's not the same as our main channel videos, which we film with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K. In fact, we've got two of them. This is just done with a Logitech webcam. I apologize. Sometimes the quality is not so good. I apologize. I would ask you to just bear with me, and we will try and see what we can do. Anyway, the purpose of this, and I have just zoomed in, and I'm just making sure that everything is properly set. Everything is as it should be. So let me just quit out of this, and hopefully you'll be able to see me. I know the quality now is not quite so good, so let me just remove myself and come right back. There you go. So let's talk about some updates that have been going on in the Transport Evolved world in the last couple of days, and I want to make sure that you are aware of some changes that have happened. So first, but not necessarily the most important, is the news that we have been busy working on getting Michael's car back on the road. There's been some amazing people who have reached out and offered their assistance. Kiora from New Zealand there, Hamish, hello. Or Aotearoa if you prefer. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So Michael's car, Michael has a Chevrolet Volt with a V, a Chevrolet Volt, and his car has developed an error. The error, which I incorrectly identified in the last live stream. I actually, as I said, I have mild dyslexia. It's P0, so Papa 0, A for Alpha 9E. This is the error right here. I don't know if you can see that. That is the error. It's relating to a circuit, and what we think is an open circuit in the thermistor on the battery pack. And Michael doesn't have a car right now. He has been, he's actually borrowing my wife's car right now. My wife has a Chevrolet Bolt with a B, and he's borrowing that so he can get some essential errands done. It looks as if we have an offer of a place to put the car, to put it up on a ramp. Michael is, I think, quite fairly concerned that we might not be able to repair this car in the amount of time that we've been given to fix it. But we're going to do some reaching out to people next week and see if we can figure out exactly how long this is going to take and how it's going to work. The TLDR is if we are unable to fix this, he's going to be on the hook for about between $6,000 and $10,000 of repair costs. That is my current understanding of the situation. So we might have to have a little bit of a crowd. Well, he may have to have a bit of a crowdfunder. I make this clear that it's not Transport Evolved. This would be him personally as an individual. But we will try and do what we can to get that car back on the road for Michael, because he's an awesome member of the team, and right now he does not have a car, and it's not fair that this issue happened. And hopefully we can document how we can fix it. At one end, it could just be a physical connector that needs to be cleaned because it's been winter, and he got rear-ended not so long ago. And I'm curious as to whether the rear end collision caused some issues. I don't know if there's a way of talking to the insurance company about that yet. That's something that we need to investigate next week. But it started misbehaving shortly after his car was looked at by a repair center. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's a very unpleasant place for Michael to be. Now, Michael is on the bleeding edge, which is the topic of today's video, being on the bleeding edge. And being on the bleeding edge, we do sometimes get burned. And while I remember, if you are in the Portland area and you have access to a lift for an extended period of time, you are someone who knows about the Chevrolet Volt and would like to help us, reach out at that email below. Lots of people have emailed. We haven't had a chance to email everybody yet. Last week was very, very busy for everybody. It's been busy for me too, and I've not actually had a weekend off. I've been working all the way through the weekend because I've been trying to play catch up, and that means that obviously, hopefully we'll start on Monday ahead. Cheers. I love this water bottle. It's actually a smart water bottle that records how much water I've been drinking. And as part of my weight loss, I've been using it. It was a bottle that someone gave me a long time ago, and I didn't even know it was smart until about 6-8 weeks ago. And then I discovered it, and I was like, wow, I could fill this up and keep track of how much water I'm drinking. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on Michael's car. I took it for a drive yesterday. I managed to use this VCX Nano to reprogram the battery modules that were, well, not the battery modules, the control circuits that were responsible for reading the thermistor values. We hoped that it was at fault, but no, it seems like it's a physical mechanical disconnection or a physical mechanical failure of an electronic component. Anyway, I did program it one more time, and I took it out yesterday, took it for a drive, and halfway down to the valley, it started to throw errors. So I turned around and drove it back to my house, and then I drove over, picked Michael up, and we've lent him our Chevrolet Bolt for a little bit. So that is the situation. I would like to be able to get this car fixed in the next couple of weeks, though, because poor Michael is without a car. His partner does not drive, so he has to drive everywhere. And it's kind of hard because Michael lives the furthest away, other than Kate, who lives a long way away, but everybody else on the team lives in the greater Portland area, but he has the longest commute. So it'd be good to get that car back on the road for him so he can actually come to the office, because right now he's working remotely. That's one of the reasons why I'm working today, because we had to render some stuff that he couldn't, so I had to render it and upload it. The Sunday musing for Erin, which is why it was late. So Erin did the Sunday musing this week. She also did the Lizard and Garden update. So go over to Transport Evolved Take 2 and check that out if you haven't already. But the other important thing that we need to talk about today, back to being on the bleeding edge. And, Michael has a plug-in hybrid, a range extended EV, whatever you want to call it, that shouldn't be on the bleeding edge anymore. But it's apparent that this problem is becoming fairly common. At least I've seen several references to it. And there doesn't seem to be an affordable, easy solution to it. And that makes me think a little bit about the lifespan of these vehicles and how sustainable is it to make an EV or a plug-in hybrid or a range extended EV if it's going to be very expensive and not very cool to fix and not very easy to fix in the event of something going wrong. So now let's talk about the F-150 Lightning. And the F-150 Lightning was as you may have seen on Friday, we had the F-150 Lightning's home integration system was finally set up and finally worked. And I will be making a video probably for Wednesday. I'll probably make it tomorrow and publish it Wednesday. We have a pre-existing commitment to publish a video tomorrow with a sponsor, but Wednesday's video is open, and so I will be making a video about the F-150 Lightning, about its battery backup system, and about how we fixed, or rather it mysteriously started to work overnight. So talking on Friday, you will have hopefully all seen a video that went live on Friday. We were talking about the F-150 Lightning and the home integration system as designed by Delta Systems and installed, or at least sold, not in our case, not installed, but sold by Sunrun, installed by Sunrun in most locations across the US. And apparently Sunrun now do have an installation partner here in Oregon. At the time they did not. So we ended up working with a local electrician who we trust, and they worked with Sunrun. Sunrun designed the system, and our local electricians just followed that plan. If you watched the very long, slightly rambly video on, it would have been Friday, when I was discussing how frustrated I was about the fact that we'd gone through these hoops that, went all the way back to October when we first started to have the system installed, and to today. And there were a couple of weird things that were happening along that journey. Like, for example, in October, immediately after we got that system installed, our electricity bill was ungodly high. I mean, we had an $800 electricity bill, then a $700 electricity bill, and then another $800 this month. So something wasn't right with the system. And I don't know if the heat pumps were to blame, because we had heat pumps put in last year, or if it was the system and something not working. But Sunrun ultimately blamed the span smart panel that we had on the house. Now, we had that span panel installed back in October when we had the Ford home integration system installed. Sunrun at the time said, well, maybe it will work, maybe it won't. They then chose to blame the span system and asked for us to have the span system removed. What we ended up doing, if you are an electrician and you're watching, we actually ended up last week getting our electricians to come back to take the span panel, which was going to be our essential loads panel, and switch it around so that our essential loads panel became the dumb old school consumer unit in the garage, and our span panel became our non-backed up, non-essential loads. So things like all of our EV charging stations, we have 4 of them. Sorry, we have 3 of them if you don't include the Charge Station Pro. So 3 charging stations plus the dryer circuit for our dryer in the laundry room, and our stove. And so we had those things transferred over to our span panels. So at least we'll be able to test out the span system and see that integration and see how our high current appliances are working. Everything else went on to the dumb unit in the garage, and that was designed to be backed up by the Ford home integration system. Now, that would satisfy Sunrun's requirements because the span panel is no longer connected after the Ford home integration system in our electrical circuit. It's actually located upstream of that unit, and it's coming off the main lugs where they come into our house. So the power comes into our house and it kind of goes 3 different ways. One goes to the span panel, which is not backed up. One goes to the home integration system and then to the main breaker. the main breaker, the main consumer unit in our garage, and then our solar panels feed into the grid through that system as well, through that connection. So we've got 3 connections coming off our main lug. So when all of that had been done, our electrician was like, "Hey, I'm pretty much done now. Let's do some tests." We did some tests. It didn't work. So then we ended up reaching out to Sunrun and said, "Hey, we've still got issues with this. It's not working." The lead engineer on the project called me back, and he was kind of he was fairly convinced that it was either the electrician that we had used, or that there was something else in our house causing the system to fail. I would like to say the conversation was civil, but it wasn't. It was kind of frustrated on both sides. I think that's probably a fairly good characterization of it. And we left it with me going, "Well, look, the Sunrun engineer said, well, it works. You were able to back up your power and run 110 volt circuits, and you didn't have any issues. It was only when you tried to turn on high current devices like your heat pumps or your well pump or anything else that the system failed and required to be fixed or required to be rebooted." I said, "Hey, that's not what we designed the system for. It's not what you designed the system for. It's not what we spec'd as customers when we were working with Sunrun. Sunrun didn't say you can't run these off here. It said, yeah, that should be fine. You may not be able to run your well, but everything else should be fine." And we'd said, "Look, the expectation is that the system works as you agreed it would when we were part of that design process. And we'd acknowledge that the well pump may not want to run on it. So fine, if the well pump doesn't work, that's fine." But what ended up happening was that we ended the call. I made that very frustrated video, which was published on Friday morning, and the engineer told us on Thursday evening, "Well, I'll check the logs. I'll try and check the logs overnight, and we'll see what happens." Now, the very next morning, 8 a.m., I go outside with my dogs. My wife had gone to run an errand. And I've been trying not to switch over the system with my wife in the house because, if it fails, and she's trying to use her computer or something, that's not necessarily particularly pleasant. So as she was out of the house, I was like, "You know what? I'm going to just test this system." So what I did was I turned off the truck. Turned off the supply to the truck and flipped the breaker to simulate a power cut, and waited. And I was just, playing fetch with the dogs in the garden. And then lo and behold, the lights came on in the house, and then the air conditioning came on, and then the other air conditioning came on. We've got 2 heat pumps. We've got one heat pump for the server room, which is just across that way. Basically, it's across there. We have a heat pump that just pumps heat out of the server room because we've got servers for the business. Obviously, uses quite a lot of electricity. That server room pulls a constant 1.5 to 2 kilowatts most of the time because it's got all of the servers for all the video stuff. It's also got our Mastodon server and a couple of other important servers for the business in there. And then the other heat pump we have is for the rest of the house. So this system that you can see right here, that is part of a larger heat pump system that runs for the rest of the house. You can see it's off here because this room generally stays pretty warm with all the computers we've got in, especially when they're on and running. So both of those systems worked. The water heater, because it was first thing in the morning, the water heater was operating. So it was pulling 3 to 4 kilowatts. So we had the base load in the house, the everyday base load from appliances that were running, like the fridge and the freezer and all of that. Plus the server room. We had the heat pumps, the one to keep the house warm, and it was a cold morning, there'd been a frost, and the heat pump to pump heat out of the server closet. We obviously had the server closet itself, all of those other things. They were all running, and they were pulling up to, I think we peaked out at about 9 kilowatts. The system ran, it just kept running, it kept running. It kept running until I turned it off. Now, earlier today, my sister-in-law came over with her husband, Hello, guys. I know she watches, so hello. Came over to drop some stuff off and pick some stuff up from us, and I was super excited and wanted to demonstrate the system. So I flipped the breakers downstairs. You know, we waited 2 or 3 minutes, and then the lights came back on, and the truck worked. So there will be a proper video coming next week, going, "Hey, it's now working." But the reason I'm doing this live stream is to address some of the criticisms that came our way, and I feel like a lot of you watching are being kind of intolerant of the situation, um, of the acknowledgement that the system that we have is cutting edge, right? It's bleeding edge. It's new. Companies are still figuring it out. Now, I'm not saying companies should ship a product that is not ready for prime time. And I've seen several times this home integration system, it's got some issues, right? When it was installed and it was sitting on our wall the first week, it was running 0.0 version software, so 1.0 point something, right? So it was very early on in its firmware, and I think that showed quite dramatically in the fact that it wasn't working properly. Now, I haven't gone out and checked. You have to log in using a special app on your phone. Haven't gone out, and it's got a Bluetooth connection to the inverter. You have to stand literally right in front of it to see what version of the firmware was pushed. But my gut reaction is that, you know, we published this video on very early on Friday morning saying we weren't very happy, and then miraculously the system works. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to make any comments beyond that, but it seemed a bit strange that it starts working after we complained about it and pushed that video. But anyway, it is now working, and it seems to be working fine. But to those of you commenting you know, we had a lot of negative comments discussing, you know, well, you should have just bought a Tesla Powerwall, or you should have just bought a Tesla, or you could have done this, or you could have done that, or you are stupid for doing this, or you're stupid for doing that. I know this is the internet, right? And I know that the internet is a place where people like to make their worst side loud. Partly because there's very little in terms of repercussions. There's very little in terms of kind of I suppose any consequences for those people. But I think it's also important to note that, you know, we entered into this Ford home integration system, and buying it was $9,000 and a bit. We haven't had the bill yet, but top of memory is about $9,500, and I'm paying that out of pocket, right? Unfortunately, we're gonna have to put that on a credit card, but we are paying that partly because we wanted to make content for the channel about it, right? And discuss it and discuss our experiences. Partly because we wanted to have a backup power system for our house, because we live in a very rural area. And last year we had the power turned off in the summer because of risk of forest fires. So they turned off the mains electricity. And here we had some issues, you know, with other stuff. But we had a huge number of people commenting that they felt the system was badly designed, or that it was terrible, or that maybe we hadn't designed the system properly. I was like, it's nothing to do with us. We were clients. Yeah, we said, yes, we'd like it designed this way. But we don't need to add any extra capacitors. We don't need to add any extra doodads and hoo-has. You know, the heat pumps we have for the house were designed to be soft start, were designed to operate within a very controlled manner, and they do. The well pumps, we've got one well pump that isn't a soft start, but the other one is a soft start. And when that older pump finally dies, it will be a soft start too. You know, and moving down that kind of that logical path, right? We're looking at the equipment we've got. We're looking at how we spec'd it. The system should have worked, but it didn't. There was an error. I think it was a software error. I think it was a configuration or a software error that was fixed via an over-the-air update. So our home integration system, just like our truck, just like many vehicles today. It can receive over-the-air updates. It has a Wi-Fi connection. We have a special Wi-Fi network in our house that is just for Internet of Things. We actually have a second Wi-Fi network in our house that is just for our cars and those their home integration system. They also have a 4G modem or a 5G modem in them, so they can download things, right? It is a challenge sometimes to find the problem. And while the way that the discussion went on Thursday was not pleasant for either party, I think it's important to remember that we are on the bleeding edge of technology, and sometimes things don't work, and sometimes you do have to come along and come up with an alternative that suits better. I'm looking over here because I want to show you this. So this here is, I'm being very careful about it. This here is a Raspberry Pi. This Raspberry Pi is running a special hat on top, and it is called a Pi SCSI. It used to be called RASCSI, right? It's a SCSI, Small Computer Systems Interface. See, I remember. It's a SCSI emulator. So it can emulate a SCSI CD-ROM, different drives, hard drives, and you connect it. You just plug it into the GPIO pins on top of a Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi 4, right? And it's just got a USB NVMe drive attached underneath, although it's not booted off that right now. And this is, I guess, considered bleeding edge. This is hobby equipment, right? This is hobby commitment, and this is, this is bleeding edge. When I got this, I arrived last week. As you know, I'm into Retro Macs, right? So there's one sitting on the floor. So last week when I got it, I tried plugging into this, which is Raspberry Pi Model B+, I think. Kind of an early Raspberry Pi. It's got the 40-pin GPIO header on it, 40-pin, and it fits, and it ran the software. But the problem was, every time I tried using a SCSI device, it was causing errors with the computer. The computer was giving me, weird errors, and the da-da-da-da thing that Macs do when they're unhappy. And I thought that the RASCSI, or the Pi SCSI, as it's now called, was faulty, right? I was starting to look. I was like, maybe it's the image files that I'm using. Maybe it's the hard drive. Maybe it's the SD card, right? Well, it turns out that it was this. And it wasn't until I kind of opened a terminal on my Mac, and I SSH'd into it, and I basically logged into it remotely, and I started looking at the messages this was sending, and it was sending messages going, hey, I don't have enough power, I don't have enough processors. It was throttling down. It was complaining about the power quality. As soon as I took this off and replaced it with a Raspberry Pi 4, it started working perfectly. And since then, I've had one of my laptops running on the RASCSI. I've had that other machine working on it as well. And it was all happy. Jim says, I hope that my comments about getting hold of Tom Malogany's installers didn't come across as negative to you. No, absolutely not. Sunrun did leave me in the lurch, and it was actually something I was going to do this weekend. I was going to reach out to Tom because I needed to talk to him some other stuff. I'm making Tom something, and my 3D printer is broken, and I cannot fix it because I have not been able to print the part I need to fix it. Does that make sense? One of you has offered to print it, and I need to reach out to you. Same person who gave me that, actually, that Mac. So I need to reach out to them and say, yes, please, can you print this for me? Yeah, I was going to reach out to Tom, and it was very, very cool. A soft start is still when combined with high existing, yes, you're right. A soft start, yes, maybe we could use a capacitor, but my point here, David, is that the system is sold as a standalone product, right? We're not trying to do something that's never been done before. This is bleeding edge, yes, but if, again, it's kind of that you're on the bleeding edge and you have to acknowledge that things sometimes won't work straight away, but you also have to acknowledge that if a product is being sold and advertised as having a specific set of capabilities, and the system has been designed to do that, and the integration of the system in your home has been designed with a team of engineers who designed the product and said, yes, that should work. There is an element of, well, this is not doing what you said it would do. Please fix it. And in this case, I'm pretty determined, and I, at the moment, until I hear otherwise, I'm going to maintain that it's working because somebody went back to their office, looked at the errors that were coming from my system, and went, either it's not configured properly, or there is a software error. Let's reflash it. Let's force a new update onto that system, and then suddenly it works. Seems pretty conclusive to me, if you ask me. So now it's working. I am very happy about that. I'm very excited about it. But I was very disturbed by some of the comments that people were leaving, that kind of, well, you didn't spec it properly, or they didn't spec it properly. Maybe Sunrun didn't spec it properly, but kind of passing judgment on the system without understanding the system is kind of tough. We did a lot of research before we put the system in, before we had someone put it in. Our electricians did a lot of research. Sunrun were difficult to get hold of sometimes, and there were lots of people kind of trying to work on that system. There was quite a high turnover in terms of people on the project, which I think probably didn't help. But at the end of the day, it is now working. I was able to run my house from it. And some people were like, well, 7 to 9 kilowatts, that's too much. Clearly, you're overloading it and it's breaking. Again, at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday morning, when our water heater is still on, and I should point out that our water heater came on late that day because we hadn't reset the clock from when the electrical work had been done. It was trying to heat the water from cold, which means it's going to use more electricity. This room was running because I'd just woken up and I was getting ready for the work day. The server room was running full kilt because it was doing a disk check. So it was using higher electricity than it normally would. It was well below freezing outside, so the heat pumps were working harder. And I think there was something else drawing a current. But we were like, hey, this is fine as long as it's below that 9.8 or 9.9 kilowatts that system can actively support. We're good. The other thing to bear in mind is the engineer from Sunrun told me that the inrush current that system can support is higher than the continual draw. So it might be rated for a continual up to 9.6 kilowatts is its maximum. It can take a higher instantaneous power draw from a soft start device. So the fact of the matter is, because we went to sleep and then woke up the next day and it was fixed, just tells me that somewhere overnight somebody gave it an update, somebody reset it, or something else. So I think it's important to acknowledge that it's now working, and there will be a video coming. I was kind of blown away by how many people don't read the comments. I assume that people, when they go to a video, they read a few comments and then they comment. There are lots of people commenting on that video after we pinned hey, it's now working, there's a video coming soon. We had more comments after that point of people going, this is why it's not working. So I'm like, I don't know what I can do. If you watch one of our videos and it has the word update or updated in the title and there's a pinned post, please read it, because it might be that there's an important change to the video and we want to make you aware of it. So this is kind of a stopgap measure until we actually make a proper video discussing discussing the system, which I want to do next week. As I say, I'll probably make it tomorrow, and it'll probably go out on Wednesday. I have some time off this week. I've got to have some dental surgery done this week, which I'm not looking forward to. So I'm going to be out of action for a day or so. And that would be a good chance for us to do that. So where was I? So True Tech says, sometimes I won't read other comments before posting on purpose, as an idea in my head might be lost. Yes, that's fair enough. But go back and read them after you have posted the video, because you might surprise yourself, and you might then be contradicting what somebody else has said. So the system is working. It's good. We're on the bleeding edge. Sometimes things go wrong. I want to reiterate, I don't know what the cause was. I think it was probably just a software update. Our electricians were brilliant. They did a really good job. I wasn't super plussed with the way that Sunrun handled it. Honestly, it felt on Thursday like the Sunrun team was kind of passing blame, which they did a lot throughout that process. But the fact is now it is working, and it is seemingly working well. We have UPSs on all of our computers in our house. We have more computers than your average person. My wife, her office is through that wall. She has a desktop computer, which is her personal computer. She has then 2 work computers that she has that run on a UPS. This machine, this is the iMac Pro that we have. It runs on a UPS because we nearly lost it once because it didn't. And then Michael's computer, which is those 2 screens there, it runs on a UPS as well, as does the server room. The server room has its own UPS. It used to have 2, and now it has 1 because one of them blew, and I haven't had a chance to buy a new one, and it's about $1,000 for that particular model, so I haven't saved up pennies yet because Transport Evolved didn't have the best years last year. So we are basically, when the power goes off, those UPSs kick in, and they give us about 15 minutes of grace. And 15 minutes, it should be long enough for the truck to kick on and turn on. And when we're talking about long-term power cuts, the server room is on the backup, because if it happens at night, and we have to sometimes leave the servers on overnight, obviously the Mastodon server's on all the time. It's just a Raspberry Pi, by the way. It's just one of these just sitting in the closet or in the server room. When there is a power cut, if the drives are doing backups, it's important that the system has a chance to carry on doing its thing. And if there is a backup and we notice it, we can turn off the servers gracefully rather than just have them turn off. And so that's why we weren't originally going to put the server room on there, but now we've got that extra capacity. We did put the server room on there. And our plan is, if we ever do have a major power cut and we think we're going to be out of action for a day or more, we'll turn off all the computers that we don't use during the day. We'll turn off the servers. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Computers that we would normally use during the day, we'll just say, hey, we can't work. We're just going to work on a laptop or something. We'll turn off the servers, which will reduce the load. We'll turn off anything that is not essential. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't spec the system with our stove or our dryer, because we have a toaster oven, we have a microwave, we can run those off a 110 volt circuit. We don't need to run a big oven. There's only 2 of us. So that is where we are at with that system. And I think, it's really important to say bleeding edge is bleeding edge, and it's bleeding difficult sometimes. The same thing is true for, whether you're doing Tesla Autopilot, full self-driving beta. You should, if you're going to run any kind of early on software, whether it's Tesla full self-driving beta, whether it's you've just bought a brand new EV that's new to market and you're testing out software, you have to go into it cognizant that there are likely teething problems. I don't think I've ever talked about this. This computer here, this one right here, this is my iMac Pro, right? I leased it originally in 2017 because my old My old editing machine was getting really old. The old edit machine was a 2012 machine. It was starting to fail. It wasn't a Mac, it was a PC running Mac OS. And so I leased a brand new iMac Pro, this machine in 2017. It was, I think we paid about $300 a month to lease it. It's spec'd out really well. It's at like a 10 core. It's got 128 gigs of RAM. It's got 10 gigabit networking, which is essential if you want to move files to and from. And I think I've showed you all this before. These are the kind of drives that we use when we are transferring files from the cameras to the server room. And so we have to use a lot of storage. It has to be fast storage. When we're editing video, you can't edit video on your desktop. You have to edit it off of the server. And so I leased this, and I jumped in very, very early on to get this computer, because I think I was the first customer at my local Apple store to pick up. I wasn't the first customer to order, but I was definitely the first one to pick up. Somebody else had ordered one before me, but they'd ordered the really super fancy singing dancey one. This computer worked out to be $10,000 worth of computer. And I leased it for 3 years, and then at the end of the lease, it became mine. And this computer has been really solid. It's now 6 years old. It's starting to show its age, and it's going to need to be replaced this year, thankfully with a much more affordable machine, because technology's got better. But when it was brand new, Apple pushed out a software update that killed the computer. It literally just would not boot. It did not want to do anything. And I ended up, having to reinstall the software. And if you look back at that time, sort of the end of 2017, there were several weeks where I'm like, I'm sorry, there's no 10, or 10's going to be late because we're trying to fix this machine. And I was in my studio in downtown Portland until like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I would come home in tears because issues. And Apple, bless them, they put me in touch with a tier 3 technician, and she was lovely. And we were on the phone, late into the night, kind of trying to finish each other's sentences and trying to figure out exactly what the problem was. She was great. I've forgotten her name now, but she helped me determine that it was probably a software issue, but they were going to send me out a brand new iMac Pro just in case, because they wanted to look at mine to make sure it wasn't something hardware related. So they sent me out the next day a brand new machine, which is what this one is. The original one went back to Apple, and the new one had the same issue. And the technician reached out to me pretty quickly after that and was like, hey, we know about it. There's a patch. We're pushing it now. Here's the patch. And we were able to fix it, right? We were able to fix it. And everything has been good since. The machine has been pretty darned reliable. I tell you that tale because we were bleeding edge early on in ownership of this vehicle. There has not, the vehicle of this computer. There has not been a vehicle, an electric vehicle that I have owned from new, that has not had some kind of bleeding edge failure or problem early on. That was a new car. So the Nissan Leaf, we had issues with our Nissan Leaf early on. There were a couple of software glitches that needed to be fixed. The same was true of our Volt when we had our Volt. The same thing has been true of my Bolt. When I got my Bolt, there was a couple of recalls that were just fixed pretty quickly. And, the F-150, there's been a couple of things that have needed to be fixed just because bleeding edge, right? It's nothing more than that. Bleeding edge. So if you are somebody who is going to get frustrated with these bleeding edge issues, don't buy a product until it's been out for a while. That's the kind of the long and the short of it. When we signed up to get this Charge Station Pro home integration system set up, we knew we were going to be bleeding edge, and we knew we were going to be early on in the process and be early adopters. And so it has been problematic, and c'est la vie. When we make videos about these issues, though, we're not trying to say that you should take that video at face value and then make a judgment call about that company being terrible and you're never going to buy one of those products. It's a subjective experience, right? It's just me or whoever else is reporting at the time, right? Michael has a problem with his Chevrolet Volt right now, but that doesn't mean Chevrolet Volts are terrible cars. It just means he's having an issue with his car, right? It's a fairly common issue, but lots of people don't have that issue. I had a problem getting the home integration system running. It's still not 100% integrated into our smartphone app thing. I need to reach out to Sunrun next week and try and figure out how to fix that. But again, some people, Tom Malogny, had a great experience. Other people are going to hit roadblocks, are going to hit issues because it's bleeding edge, because you cannot, however well intentioned your goals, however amazing you are as an engineer, however awesome the software is, however many hours of simulation you've run through, however many, QA tests, there's always going to be issues. I mean, it's just the nature. You when you design and build a complex system, there will be glitches, and we humans are kind of a case in point, right? Human evolution has brought us to where we are today. We're very complex. We're very incredible as a biological machines that we are. But that doesn't mean there are not glitches. There are not bugs. You wouldn't turn around and say, well, I'm not having a human in my, I'm not going to be a human, or I'm not going to have, not going to get married to another human because this human over here, they've got cancer, and this human over here, they have this genetic defect, and that means all humans are terrible. No, right? We look at it and go, oh, okay, there's a bug. My heart condition is a bug. There's somewhere in my genetic code, I can't remember which chromosome, but somewhere in one of my stretches of DNA, it's as if someone's come along and just spliced out like 7 protein pairs in one of my strands of DNA that should be there that are not. And we believe that's what's caused me to have long QT syndrome, which is why I have an implanted device keeping check of my heart, and why I'm on certain medication to try and keep me safe, and why if you see me out and about outside of the local area, I'm very often am carrying an emergency defibrillator, or will have one nearby. So, complex systems fail. And the more complex a system, the more likely it is to fail in a way that you didn't expect it to. And that is unfortunate, but it is unfortunately the way it works. I'm thinking about computer games, right? So does anyone remember the original Assassin's Creed and the horse bug, where the horse would just keep running, and it was the graphics of the horse were weird, and it was inverted or something, or the guys at the wall, right? The guys the guards just trying to get through the wall, and they'd be stuck. It's just the way it is. All right. Anonymous Freak. I recently realized that every vehicle I currently own is the first generation of a brand new EV platform. 3 of the 4 are first year. 3 of the 4 are first vehicle by a brand new company. Yeah. By the way, Anonymous Freak, just in, I was playing with this earlier, and Pie Scuzzy. This is the SE that you gave me, and there's 4 megabytes of RAM on the way for it. Job's a good one. So, it is, I think it's important when we're discussing a product and when we comment on problems that people have, to understand that they may not be trying to go for shock value. And I understand why a lot of people believe that we are trying to do that, or have that shock value realization or reaction. But the reality is, that's not how we work at this channel. We tell you the good and we tell you the bad, right? So this product is incredible, but we have issues with it right now. That doesn't mean that we're saying you shouldn't buy it. It's going, hey, we have had this issue with this product that has been giving us a headache, and you should know about it. And further down the road, we may turn around and go, "Hey, we fixed this problem, and now it's awesome," or it mysteriously fixed itself. This is the case with the home integration system. It's why I have this. Why I have my little Flipper Zero. I don't have a Flipper Zero because I want to drive down the street and pop open Tesla charge port doors. I have it because I like tinkering. I like figuring out how things work, and I like knowing what the vulnerabilities and the good and the bad things are with it. Apparently, my dolphin is angry with me. I don't know why. But anyway, I guess that's all I was going to say. Go and watch your sports ball, and if you want to support the channel, do so by going to patreon.com/transportevolved, which you can do there, or you can follow the show on Mastodon. And I'm going to go and update the Mastodon server shortly because that's the next thing I need to do. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining in. It was very kind of informal and a little bit slow, and I know that there's been only a few people watching. Thanks if you have been watching, and yeah, if you are into old Macs and you have some old Macs you'd like to see on the channel, reach out because I'd love to hear from you. And normal service will be resumed very shortly. I've got a great video lined up for tomorrow talking about how to fall in love with solar panels the week of Valentine's Day. So if you are celebrating Valentine's this week, I hope you have a lovely time. And also, don't forget that I'm not going to be around on Tuesday this week. I'm going to have some dental surgery, which I'm not looking forward to. I have something called resorption. We don't know why, but I have a hole in my tooth that is just because my tooth has decided to just be eaten by my body. Apparently that happens when you're young and your teeth fall out. Well, I've got adult teeth that have decided to start doing that, so they need to do some drilling and things. I've only ever had one filling in my life, and it was a very small one when I was in my 40s. So I'm kind of butthurt that my teeth are no longer perfect in terms of they've never had any like I've never had any teeth removed because of decay or anything. And right now it's not decay, it's just that my mouth is very painful. Whenever I eat anything, my whole mouth is like feels lit up. Anyway, that is what it is. I will see you all next week, and yeah, enjoy the sports ball, and as always, keep evolving.